This is called King of France. I rounded the corner and stopped. Standing on the sidewalk was a man wearing an upside-down silver bucket on his head, holding a baguette. I groaned softly. Of course he would be standing in front of the bank door, the bank on which I needed to withdraw money. I trudged towards him, looking down, fishing around in my pockets as though desperately intent on finding something in them. I was hoping I could make my way to the door without making eye contact. No such luck. A loud bang startled me into looking up. The man held the baguette above his head. The bucket still reverberated from its contact with the apparently very stale baguette. The man grinned at me. "I am the King of France!" I forced a smile, only in San Francisco. Now that I was closer, I could see the man had very lean features. His brown, sun-damaged skin was pulled tight over his cheekbones. He had large, dark eyes that didn't seem to blink, and he gazed at me excitedly, like a child who'd been given a new toy. Above his lip, he'd drawn a mustache with curlicues on either side of it, bringing to mind Inspector Perot. The ink was smudged above the cleft of his lip, and I could see a 5 o'clock shadow growing beneath. His clothes looked vaguely military, gray-green trousers and a long-sleeve green button-up with a patch on the arm. It was the patch that gave him that added authority, until I realized the patch was of a bikini-clad woman lying on her side. The man banged his bucket again and repeated, "I am the King of France!" He stood squarely in my way. "I'm sorry," I managed. "Excuse me, I've got to..." Before I could finish, he spun back from the door with a teetering pirouette, clutching the baguette in its middle like a baton. He banged his bucket helmet and repeated the words as I yanked at the door. It was locked. I looked at the hours printed on the glass and saw that they closed early on Saturday. I could still use my bank card to get in, though. I dug around quickly in my purse, eager to leave the street and the crazy person behind. The man said, "The peasants are uprising." His change of tone surprised me so much that I had to look back at him. His expression had gone from gleeful to forlorn. I wondered which king he thought he was, or if he even knew. "It may be the guillotine for me," he said, frowning and watery-eyed. He reached towards me, and I turned away from him, feeling disturbed. I slid my bank card through the slot, and the door clicked. I opened it and stepped through in one quick move, pushing the door shut behind me. I sighed with relief at the silence of the ATM corridor. I withdrew the money, careful to stand in front of the ATM and its delivered cash, wondering if the King of France was watching me. I turned around, dreading to see the man pressed against the glass of the door. He was nowhere to be seen, though. I stepped out into the sunlight and the street noise and saw him. He was sitting, collapsed against the wall to my right. The baguette was propped across his knees, and his chin was settled on top of it. "There'll be the guillotine for sure," he said, half sobbing, not looking at me. I turned, walked 3 paces in the opposite direction, and stopped. I heard the man's sobs behind me. I turned back to him. "Your Majesty." At first he didn't hear me over the traffic. I stepped closer and repeated it more loudly. "Your Majesty." He looked up. I felt ridiculous. I looked around before saying, "The peasants all love you, they will always love their king." Then, not even understanding why I was doing it, I curtsied. A smile slowly drew across the man's lined face. He leaped up, startling me. I stepped back. "I am the King of France!" he exclaimed, raising his baguette to the sky, which for one brief moment was silhouetted against the sun and gleamed like a scepter. He then clanged it upon his bucket with such force that he was dazed momentarily afterwards. He did 2 spins away from me and skipped down the sidewalk. Writing beneath the window of my kitchen. Above, someone tortures a piano, trying to get it to sing. Outside, the mingled chirping of children and birds. A passing bus rattles the house. Within, a clock ticks towards oblivion. My cat's tongue slips against her fur, and the refrigerator exhales constantly. There are moments of stillness when I can imagine the sounds that remain are no more than water in my ears, that maybe the whole kitchen has filled up, the tap left running or a pipe sprung, and I rest at the bottom of a bright pool, seated at the sunken pier of my table, soaked in the window's tidal light. The pages of my books wave open lazily like flaps of kelp. My pen drifts slow and heavy across the page, somewhere causing a current, and on some distant surface, a ripple. In the damp chill of an August evening in Ludington, Michigan, I stand in my flip-flops on the end of the uneven pier, the comb that parts the reeds and weeds of this lake. I stare up at the stars, which have never seemed so luminous through the gauze and glow of the city back home. I have seen 3 shoot across, so quick they could have hidden in a blink, and each time my heart lifts, as though pulled into the dark vacuum of their wake. I have made wishes each time, the same wish which I cannot tell you. I am looking for something up there beyond the froth of the Milky Way and the flotsam of stars and planets. If I could only plunge my hands into that icy black lake, palms pressed together, then parted in a rush, to reveal the life that breathes beneath, the eyes that watch from the deep, the tail that carves the currents, the source of those splashes, heard but in the dark, unseen, far offshore, beyond the silent drift of stars. Moonlight recessional. Because the moon is getting farther away each year, I have been collecting moonlight, lining the shelves of my basement with unlabeled jars of soft white moony light. When the lunar dust has settled, I will stack my jars like a luminescent lemonade stand on boardwalks across the world, charging thousands per jar, or maybe just $1 for a peek. I will string jars from telephone wires so they can hang like miniature moon lanterns orbiting the breeze, frenzied moths tapping against the glass. I will leave them half buried in the sand of dry shorelines and bring the tides to rise. I will be careful with these jars, not to break them, lest the moonlight bound into the abandoned night, searching as vainly as we will for its parent among the stars. Bedtime stories I would tell. The boggin waits for little girls who don't tie their shoes or brush their teeth or clean their room. Better be nice to your little brother, or the boggin will rise, one massive black paw pushing upwards, followed by the other. Its rust-colored rear talons will scar pavement as it shuffles and shakes its needled body. Its leathery wings will creak as it spreads them wide as your nightmares, before taking flight and coming for a girl. Not you, but very much like you, were you to punch Tommy in the nose again.